very interesting to me. College football, the College Football Playoff Committee, apparently is considering expanding their playoffs to 12 teams. In fact, it was reported that it is an early favorite, the 12-team model, among a bunch of stakeholders, that they'd be very interested in a 12-team playoff. Now, this is what we know. What we know is that last year, all these networks, conferences, leagues, teams, they were hemorrhaging money. They were losing tons of money. And at the end of the day, money is never enough. There's never enough money that you have saved up. No amount of money is safe. And what did each league do? How did each league adjust? Now, part of this was prior to the pandemic. But what we're seeing across professional levels is every major team is looking for ways to enhance revenue in the same manner. NFL added a wild card team, an additional wild card game, right? Featuring now 7 teams from each conference in the NFL playoffs. The NBA added this play-in tournament. The MLB added another wild card game. So instead of 8 teams in the postseason, it's 10 teams in the postseason. And why? Because it increases viewership. It increases urgency, relevancy among broader fan bases, among more teams, more geographic locations. All this additional viewership and popularity to the sport and relevancy to the sport increases the bottom line, increases revenue for all these teams, for all these networks. That's why they're pushing for these expanded playoffs. More teams means more eyeballs, which means more viewership, which means more money you can get. That's what it is. And these professional teams recognized that this is a smart method to try and raise more money. Because if you provide an additional incentive for some of these other teams that otherwise would be bottom feeders and would be irrelevant midway through the season, now you give them one last chance, and that's perhaps an additional 3 or 4, maybe 5 or 6 fan bases that are continuing to check in on their teams, continuing to watch the teams to see how they're performing, to see if they'll reach that spot. Now that's extra eyeballs, that's extra viewership and money. And the College Football Playoff Committee, they recognize that. They're seeing the type of model that's been employed by these professional teams, and they say, why can't we do that? So that's why initially they changed from the BCS championship structure of only 2 teams to the College Football Playoff. You add 4 teams all competing for a chance to win a national title. But this is why college football is attempting to do this, right? Obviously, we know they want to augment popularity and viewership and make more money. We know that. And we look at the NCAA tournament, and there's a reason why it's one of the most captivating sporting events in the calendar year. Perhaps, if not the most captivating sporting event in the year, is because you have all these Cinderella, underdogs, random, overlooked, afterthought programs that are competing in a single elimination format against some of these blue blood teams in a single elimination format with an opportunity to knock them off and upset these major blue blood programs. And so you start to include all of these new fan bases from all these new geographic locations into the mix, into the fold. So the College Football Playoff is saying, listen, we're already increasing intrigue and excitement, adding levels of excitement to each conference with this 4-team playoff. Why don't we expand? So here's my 2 thoughts. From a monetary perspective, completely understand it. Completely understand it, makes complete sense. As I just laid out, more teams means more fan bases, more eyeballs on the product, which is more money. Adds levels of intrigue, adds money, adds excitement. So monetarily, makes complete sense. But this is the wrong type of expansion, at least at this stage right now. Because really, if you're going to expand the college football playoff, what you should do is expand it to 6 teams and not 12. And here's why. With 6 teams, now you've got an opportunity for every single Power 5 conference champion to make it potentially. And you have a 6 spot for a non-Power 5 school and a champion in that conference to also compete for a national title. When you have 12 teams, you start to delegitimize and devalue some of the true and the real contenders for a national title. You add too many teams in the mix. Now, again, how many of those teams can seriously compete for a national title? What you do is you have the first and second teams in my 6 team format have a bye in the first round. You have the 6 and the 3 seed play a matchup to see who advances in the 4 and the 5. And the winners of those 2 games take up the 3 and the 4 spot. If the 6 seed wins, they become the 4 seed. If the winner of the 4 and 5, whoever the winner of the 4 and 5 is, becomes the 3. And that's how you proceed and move forward. But to expand it to 12 right now, I just think that what you're setting yourself down the line for, if you do 12, then you're going to just expand it to 32. And all of a sudden, this is going to be an NCAA tournament for football, which you can't do because it's too taxing and there's not enough time in the schedule to be able to do that. So if you're going to expand the playoff, I say you expand it to 6 teams. That way you still keep the fundamental structure in place, but now you give every single major conference and non-major conference, Power 5 conference, a legitimate opportunity to go undefeated and reach the playoff. But with 4, obviously you don't have that. But 12 is too much, is too many to me.